particularly struck me three things that three people said. Murray said that he was a giant. Caroline said he was extraordinary. And Peter McCutcheon said, I loved him. And I think in those three things, even if we didn't speak today, we'd have captured everything we'd ever want to say about him. But luckily, we've got lots of stories, which I hope will make us laugh and will probably make us cry. Martin Norman's got some tissues there just to let Gary McLaughlin.
Where do we start? Is what has been, since I got the message from Craig on Saturday afternoon, where do you start to pay homage to a giant like Andy? Andy was with us for 27 years, Nicky tells us. And during that time, he was part of this family that Janice alluded to first up this morning, and we are so lucky to have this group to be able to simply hold a memory like we are going to share today. He was so special, and we will hear all of the wonderful attributes that was Andy in the course of the next hour and a half, I'm sure. But if I were to try and put one thing, put my thumb on one thing that made Andy particularly special, it would have to be his faith, his sense of Christianity, the passion he had for his family mission, and how he, as Dimitri has already said, how he lived that every day. And I was just thinking, if it was the case that all of us could be given an option and a choice to become like Andy, if we all become Christians, I'm sure we'd all sign up tomorrow. It would be a no-brainer. And I know there are a lot of Christians within this group, and we're all prepared to report it, but for me, that's what made Andy just the person he was. And if that's what being a Christian is all about, then he has set just the most wonderful example that we should follow.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I wasn't planning to be here today, so I'm also on this list. But this was a meeting that I didn't want to miss, even though I haven't been here very long. And he was an amazing person, and I wanted to share this with you all as well. My first message is from Sanjay Kumar. Sorry to hear the sad news. I will not be able to attend the meeting tomorrow, but when I think of Andy, I have the following memories. Very kind and gentle person. Genuine and always wanting to help people. Encouraging and wanting us to succeed our full potential. Resilient and a fighter. Great role model. Very funny. Embracing inclusiveness and diversity. Always back to people. If you can share a few of my memories at the meeting tomorrow, I'll be most grateful. From Joanne Hazel. Yes, sad news. Monty told me. Unfortunately, I won't be at the meeting tomorrow, but I'm sure it'll be very moving. Take care, all of you. Rebecca Scott. I was so shocked to hear this sad news. I didn't know Andy for long, but I have very clear memories of his friendly smile and gentle demeanour. I remember him speaking at table topics about how he had a stool for his wife to stand on, so she could kiss him because he was so tall, and how they would kiss every time they got home. I thought, what a lovely romantic person. I can't imagine what his family is going through right now. I know I'm unable to be at Toastmasters this week. My thoughts were you. From Joanna Perry. I didn't know Andy from anywhere near the length of time as many of you. However, I knew him well enough to know him as one of the bravest, kindest, most supportive and strong men I had ever met. Andy, I and we will miss you enormously. From Caroline Jack. I, like Mike, thought he should live forever. We are the fortunate ones. As for us, he will. He was a man who was extraordinary and a wonderful friend to everyone he met. I know you will all remember him on Thursday morning in your stories and words. I'm so sorry I can't be with you all. Rest in peace, Andy.
Thank you, Mike. I just have 3 memories that spring to mind and have been going through my mind ever since I heard the news about Andy. And I think what they do is they show the very casual, I think, demeanour that he demonstrated, but I think underlying it, there were a lot of his actions and his words were actually very carefully chosen. I think that was a tremendous skill that the man had. I think the first one, and I think I find him quite humorous as well, it's the way I like to always remember Andy as well. And the first one was at a humorous contest some years ago down in the Parnell Hotel, and it was the first time that I'd seen Andy deploy his Val Dunican perching on a stool routine, and I thought, what's a humorous contest? I mean, how is this going to work? How's he going to pull this off? And he then proceeded to unravel these charming, witty, really understated, minutiae observations of life. And I think from memory, they're very much focused on he never had the right glasses at the right time. And they were just wonderful. And I thought, man, this guy is really, really special, really has got a wonderful insight and charm and things. The second observation was when he evaluated a speech for me, and it was something that I had spent a fair bit of time on it, and I had wanted to incorporate a little bit of a twist in the end. And I thought I was fearful that it might not work. Thankfully, it went okay. Andy came in and did his evaluation, and he was working his way through, I like this and I like that, and I thought it was, but he really sort of stopped him and he said, look, mate, I loved it. And it was really just, I think once again, he sort of just captured exactly the right thing I wanted to hear. And it was really just sort of I'll throw the old rule book away a little bit and I'll just go to the sincerity of it. And I just thought that was just a wonderful skill that he had, a little bit leaning towards the alternative, a little bit of the subversive coming through as well. And the last point, which I'll just quickly talk to, is actually very recently. It was a meeting where Andy had a role and he was just walking up along here, and I think we were on best behaviour in order to try and impress some guests. And he said, Andy Bray, ACB, and somebody said, so what is this ACB, Andy? And he just said, I've no bloody idea. And I think that whole subversive character, I think, just sort of ramped it up a few notches for me, and I just expressed even more admiration for the fellow. So that's how I certainly want to remember him, just all those wonderful little off-kilter views he had on life. Yeah. Thanks.
I reckon it was 1984. I just bought a house, 47 Rayhana Street, Okahu Bay. Deciding it was time to go and meet some locals, I rocked up to the Orenki Tennis Club. The view from the balcony was amazing. In the distance, the Waitemata Harbour, yachts, Rangitoto, and in the near view, a bunch of happy, healthy, 20 and maybe a pinch 30 somethings playing tennis. In that group was Andy Bray. So my memory of Andy is possibly a different one from yours. And then when I came along to Toastmasters 30 years later, here in the group was one familiar face, that lovely smiling face of Andy. And as I've reflected in the last few days, I've thought Andy lived life, how he played tennis. He was agile, he was lithe, he was fit, he had a lovely smile, and even if he wasn't all those things underneath, that was the persona that he put across. You looked at him, you felt $1 million, he was kindness, he was just warmth, and this encouraging man was just such a delight to ever be in his company. And so my lasting feeling about Andy is that he lived life how he played tennis. With each ball that came across the net at him, he walloped it back. He dealt with it. He lived life fair. He lived life like any mother would be thrilled to have had a son like Andy. He played fair. He was a good man. So that's my lasting memory of Andy, was he was a good man.
It's a fairly old boy. When Craig phoned me on Saturday morning, it would be fair to say I started to cry, because to me Andy was a giant. He was someone that made an impression on you the moment you saw him, because he had a heart, and he had a good heart. And I often used to use Andy as an example if I spoke to people, and they'd say, the best man I know is a man called Andy Bray, because of what he went through, how he dealt with it, how he portrayed himself, and how he cared for others. There's not many like it. And I have a regret, because Andy and I were supposed to have coffee a while ago, and I got busy and had to cancel, and I'm kicking myself ever since. And I've cried a lot this weekend. When my mother-in-law died about a week and a half ago, and I went and did the eulogy for that, and that brought back a lot of memories for me of Prue and so forth, and then news about Andy. And I said to Enos sometime on Sunday afternoon, I'm not sure whether I'm crying for my mother-in-law or for Andy, or it's just an accumulation of both. But it's not me. It really has. And someone said it must be sad for someone to have reached that age and then go. And I thought, well, actually, no, it's not. He had a good life, given the trials and tribulations he had. And I don't think he would want us to be really down too much. He really wouldn't, even though we are. He would want us to celebrate him. He would want us to try to walk in his shoes, to be the type of man that he was. And Sue said he was a good man. And I think for most of us men here, if someone can stand over our bodies and say he was a good man, we can't ask for much more. We really can't. I have lots of memories of Andy from the time he started at Flying Start, and we were talking, Lorraine and I, about it this morning when he first came to the Leeds Club in Parnell. I can vaguely remember his icebreaker, but all the speeches he gave, even the humorous ones, had a message. And that was the lovely part about it. But whenever he met you, he gave of himself. There was no falseness about Andy. When he saw you, he engaged with you. And if I have one request or a plea, we're going to spend this morning telling stories about how much we loved Andy, and he's gone. Can we do the same thing to the people that are here today that we know and love? We need to tell each other more often what we feel and how much we care, because this is a family. And it's not till something like this happens you realise what a big family it is. The giant has fallen. It's a big hole. I loved his faith. I gave a speech a while ago and I started out by saying, I hate Christians. And I do. And Andy was sitting there somewhere, I looked at him and he winked at me. And he said to me afterwards, because what I tried to explain in it was like, I hate narrow-minded Christians. who believe that their way is the only way. Not the open-minded people that have a deep faith like Andy and Craig and these sorts of people. I envy them their faith, and part of me wishes I could have it. It's not an excuse to try to bring me on board. But Andy lived it, he walked it, and to me he was the epitome of what a good Christian man should be, or just simply a good man. Rest in peace.
I joined this club. It's very important to me. One of the giants I saw when I first attended the club, I was invited by the late Neville Salisbury. I was daunted, I was frightened. In fact, I was fearful of this speaking situation. I lost 3 kilos before I gave my first speech. That's how profound my nerves were. Hard to realise now about that. One of those giants in the room was Andy. I was always extremely impressed by how he expressed himself, his warmth, that amazing smile, the twinkle in his eyes, that arm with all those veins. I just found it shocking that this man had to go through this physical assault on his body and having the extraordinary technology that we have today to keep a person like that alive. And I was, several of you here who were there at that time, I know there's many of you who were here in those days. It just always amazed me that this man could stay so cheerful, be so selfless. I became aware that he had the Christian faith, and I was just, given my background of where I've come from, the Christian faith, I was slightly suspicious of that. But really, the faith turned out to be in action, in word, in deeds. This man did stuff. This man took action. This man changed the world for lots of people. And that still impresses me very deeply. So, for me, I found he was very respectful. He was very funny at times. Most friendly, the friendliest person on the planet. Extremely strong, you felt, although he was not a physically strong appearing man at that stage of his life, he was strong in his integrity and in himself. He was totally encouraging. He got my nerves. He got that I was freaked out. He got that I couldn't come back sometimes. He just got it. And when he paid attention to me, I was the only person in the world. That was it. And so he gave me the gift of full attention, and not many of us can do that. Can we pay full attention to each other when it's needed? And he did that. I have one small story which none of you know, and that is that I was in the cafe at the Ponsonby old fire station one day just getting a coffee, and Andy waltzed into the cafe, and I think it was near his place of work with Family Life. I said, "Oh, how's it going? You know, where do you work? What do you do?" At that stage I didn't know all the things I know now. And he stood there and he just outlined in 3 or 4 sentences what he did and how him and Nicky were involved in this and how this was his life now, and he was saving marriages, and this was a great service too. And he didn't say that, but I realised what a great service he was doing to many people in New Zealand. So I just want to finish off by saying, I just want to say that please, all of us, let's all affirm each other. Let's all be encouraging. Let's all express that Andy sort of love to each other.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm going to read out a message from Helen Gillespie. I'm sorry to miss the meeting this week dedicated to Andy. I agree, it's a brilliant idea. Andy was very special. He made you feel comforted in his gentle way, especially when he sensed that you were having a rough time. I loved his inspiring speeches, spoken as if we were part of the conversation. He taught me a wonderful trick for remembering my speeches. Record on my phone and play back while driving around in my car. It works wonders. Andy was always encouraging, especially when we were nervously waiting our turn to give a speech. The most memorable speech I ever heard from Andy was when a couple came to his home for a marriage consultation. Andy apologised for being in the middle of a dialysis treatment. So they sat and discussed their marriage problems while Andy's blood was pumping through the machine. Suddenly, the power went off. The house went dark and Andy's machine stopped pumping. Using a flashlight, the couple had to help manually pump Andy's blood back into him. Their marriage problems were solved. They realised there were much bigger things to worry about in life. Andy endured more drama and illness in his life than any of us will ever experience, but he was always so positive. We will miss him terribly at Toastmasters, and I will never, ever forget him. I will be back in time to attend Andy's funeral on Monday. Thinking of you all on Thursday. Love to all his family. I'd just like to say a few words of my own. Everything that everybody said just sums out Andy so beautifully, but we have a really amazing word in Yiddish called mensch, and it's a person of integrity and honour. And to me, and I'm sure Mike and Pam, who understand the word and have known other people who mentions, would say that Andy was an absolute mensch. And again, the faith of him, and the moment, any time that anybody spoke to him, you felt that you were the only person in the world, that you were that person he was talking to. And that, I think, is part of being a mensch. And often talking about faith and being a Christian, obviously I'm not, and being a Jew, was still, every time he spoke, I could take something from him and bring it within my culture and my religion and understand what human beings are about. So, Andy, we'll miss you, but you will never be away from any of our hearts.
I just said, smile for the camera. I just said, Murray, does this mean this is one for the atheists when I'm up here? But sorry about that, Andy. I thought when Murray, and I'm really pleased at the moment, over the last few days I've just been all over the place emotionally, and when Murray said it, I realised I've got some memories of Andy, and nearly all of them are me seeing it through tear-filled eyes. And as some of the newer members here won't know, I go back a long time with Andy. I know you're looking up here, you're thinking 27 years, and I was a real estate agent back then, and you're thinking child prodigy, obviously. But Andy asked me to...
Andy was.
Yeah, no, it's hard to believe, isn't it? But all those years ago, and when Andy and Nikki first decided to take this move to family life, you got to remember, both Andy and Nikki had the flash cars, the very, very good salaries, and they gave all that away, and they've lived on donations ever since that time. They paid those real estate fees. So I sold Andy's home, and he lived on a site with his parents in the front and him at the back. And so I sold both those houses, and it's the only time in my whole real estate life that I've had somebody want to sell and buy a cheaper house because they wanted to spend their money and commit themselves to saving the family in New Zealand. And I remember Andy telling me that was the biggest thing he thought he could do. And it's unbelievable that, so Andy lived it. Andy was so authentic. And a couple of instances where, again, I've been there and my eyes are welled up and I'm crying. I did an open home at Andy's parents all those years ago, and there was a plaque on the wall. I went up, and there was no one in the open home, and I was just sort of reading this thing, and it had all these thank yous and thank you, and I was reading it, and then at the end it said, your loving son Andy. And I never knew this was, I thought this was like the desiderata, one of those formal, it was totally professional, this document on the wall. And I remember sitting there, tears, eyes streaming with tears on my own in this open moment. The next time that this happened, some of us here were lucky enough, Nikki invited us along to Andy's 50th, so I don't know, was that 12, 13 years ago? And it was held at the Waipuna Conference Centre. And in the letter, Nikki said, look, Andy's had a bit of a rough time, and for those of you who don't know Andy, rough time is years on dialysis, kidney transplants, kidney failures, stroke, cancer. It just kept going. All the time we've known Andy, it's just been bang, and Andy bounces back up, bang, anyone else would be flattened forever. Andy couldn't speak. I don't know for how long he lost his speech with that stroke, but he came back and he's a wonderful speaker. And we were all in this room. Andy didn't know, and the room was full of people, many of whom got up and spoke later on, and then in came Nikki, Andy, and the three children, Natasha, Olivia, and Ben, and we all called out surprise, and it was one of the most emotional events I've ever been to. The stories of people, there were people there whose marriages Andy and Nikki had saved, and they came along and they spoke, and that was one of the most moving things. I remember Ben gave a speech, My Dad Superman, about his dad. Natasha spoke, Olivia spoke. The whole thing was just the most moving thing. And before it, Nikki had said, look, Andy's had this rough patch. If you could just jot down a few words of what Andy's meant to you, your experience with Andy, it might just pump his tyres up a little bit after this bad run. You can only imagine what he describes as a bad run. And so all these tributes were there to Andy, and they were in a book, and I remember reading them with the old eyes streaming again. And the commonality in all those that we've experienced this week looking at our website was the same. Everyone found the same thing with Andy. The last one was Andy, this tribute on the wall. It had always stuck with me, and many years later, he gave me the sort of prompts and how to do it, and I did one for my parents for their 60th anniversary, and I did it, took it to Andy, and Andy was a graphic artist, and he laid it out, and we folded a photo of Mum and Dad into the back of it, and we made this beautiful thing, and he said, you've got to go and read it to your parents. And I said, look, I've been a mess, I'll just post it. And he said, no, you've got to read it. So I read this out, and it was the best thing I've ever done in my life. And to me, that's the manifestation that I've got, and I'm like a preacher to anyone who's speaking, who's going to, I'm just going along with what Murray said, if there's someone you really think the world of, tell them. And in this case, particularly parents, and I love saying it to people. I said it to a friend a while ago. I suggested to do this. I said, well, you could do a really good eulogy. And that was what Nikki said at that party to one of the people I was speaking with. She said, look, Andy's life may not be very long, and one day people are going to be up saying lots of nice things about him, and Andy isn't going to hear them. So that's why she did that on that birthday. And I've taken that, and I will tell people at every opportunity to get it down, do it, read it. It'll be the best present you ever give, and it'll be the best present the people you love will ever receive, in my opinion. So I'm lucky I've got that manifestation in my mind, those tributes of Andy. So,
thank you, Peter.
Morning, fellow Toastmasters and friends. As a lot of us have experienced, I didn't join this club 12, 13 odd years ago, and though I'd come across Andy before, until you're here and get to really feel his spirit and his being, it is truly unique. But what I found on a number of Saturday mornings when I was sitting having a coffee in Ellerslie is bumping into Andy and getting to just chat with him and realise, as we've all heard, he's always got patience, he's always got pause and grace, And it was great just to chit-chat along and realise, and often on that Saturday mornings I look up and we'll see, was he still there, or is he there today to have a chat? Because he was one of those people that you wanted to bump into, because he had such a lot to give and such a lot of pull. Looking through a few things that have been floating around for some people on the interweb, being the internet of course, I've came across this, and I'd like to share this. And this was put up by Andrew Urquhart from Radio Rima. Andy, you taught us to find joy in the journey and treasures in the darkness, even though your own life had more than its share of struggle, with kidney disease, dialysis, transplant surgery, cancer, strokes, and also the very public heartbreak of losing your eldest daughter, Natasha. You inspired us all with your courage, your wisdom, and your generosity of spirit. You so openly shared your struggles, your grief, and your love, constantly giving of yourself with humility and grace. Through your ministry, Family Life New Zealand, tens of thousands of people have been encouraged to love each other more deeply. There is so much more love in this world because of what you have brought to it. You will be deeply missed. Andrew Urquhart, Radio Rima. And when I was looking at this article, it linked me back to the site, and no, ladies and gentlemen, I don't visit there very often. But there was a little quote, and that little quote led me to something else, and I came across the first newsletter that we put out recently, which Andy helped put together, and the quote that was put up there by our president, I think was so apt when you look at the whole situation we're in today, and it was, you can't get to courage without walking through vulnerability. Brene Brown.
Thanks. I've got a simple and maybe what I think is a simple yet powerful message that Andy's taught me, and he's probably taught all of you as well, and some people have mentioned it this morning. It's that interaction that you have with Andy. If he's there with you. He's looking at you, he's got your full attention, he can almost sense your vibes or maybe what your level is. Are you happy or are you scared? He's got this intuitive sort of thing. Some people might call it like a bit of mindfulness, which is the junkie today, but I think Andy was someone who kind of was the professional kind of mindfulness coach, for lack of a better word. You know, people can go on these expensive courses to learn all these things, but we have this resource and this lovely person running our club who actually personified some of this new age thinking today. Story with Andy, I mean, everyone has their ups and downs in relationships, like all of us, and I'm not a Christian, I'm a lapsed Catholic. I don't know whether that's better than a Christian or a Jew, but Andy shared with me his story about these marriage weekends away, and even though I'm not a Christian, he was willing to share the material and information, because of all of us, we probably do go through our ups and downs. And I was going to bring with it today, it's that the weekend to remember, you know, how you get things going back in your life with your partner, and I think some of those things in that book, you kind of take away and you think about it, you know, what is that most important person in your life? And sometimes the day-to-day life, your work, other dramas and things can actually take over, and at the end of the day, if you've got that special person who kind of loves you, you love them, you're there for them, you listen to them, you understand them, you're your best friend, all of those things, I think you can kind of survive anything in life. I was saying to Gary, actually, when I walked in, I was watching a movie last night called A Wrinkle in Time. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's a Walt Disney one that was set in Queenstown and came out this year, but the story resonated with me because I was thinking about Andy last night and thinking about what I could talk about today. And it's all about a young girl's battle kind of with evil and good, and how you can actually use your mind and positive thoughts to actually overcome that evil and get reconnected back to the people that you love. And I found that quite a powerful message, even though it was a movie that was targeted at children. So I encourage you all, if you get a chance, to watch this movie and see what you take away out of it, and see maybe whether you take the same thing out of me. And I just think it reinforces some of the specialness of Andy, that how powerful we all are inside, and if we can only just be in the moment, and if we we can only just give people our love and attention and put away this fear and this anger and all these nasty things going in the world, I think the world will be a better place. So for Andy, he's taught me that message, and often I forget it, and I have to keep remembering that, we're all here for a reason, and it's and we have a choice in how we live our lives.
Yes, I was going to speak today, and I was going to give a speech. It was a moral speech, and I thought I could give it to you anyway, but I'm not going to. Decided that maybe I'll leave it for another time. I think it would have worked with you, but I wanted to share some of the things. So Saturday morning, I was at St. Luke's doing the shopping, and I thought it was grocery shopping. And as I was on the escalator going down, as you do, what else would you do on an escalator with my emails? And I read the email, "Giant has fallen." I cried. Going down those escalators, I cried. Because I remember Andy was one of these people that I used to walk into this meeting, "How are you doing, mate?" And he touched me. He's one of those guys that does. He gets into your space in a beautiful way. The very first time I ever came to Toastmasters, a number of times he used to give me a call after and say, "You know what, you are such an inspiration." He sent me a text, he sent me an email. I'm pretty sure he's done the same to all of you around this room. He really let me know. When Andy fell sick after the recent kidney dialysis issue, this whole place came together. I've never seen a family pull tighter. And we all did those couple of weeks. We really pulled together. Messages of support, well led, we did something. He pulled us together in so many ways. Yesterday, Sarah Carruthers, you may remember, who was with the thing, she posted on Facebook a New Zealand Herald article on Andy. It points to a Give a Little page. In the article, it says that they've raised a certain amount of money for him to help out with funeral expenses and a little bit further. I encourage you to do the same if you haven't. I put some money in already, over $11,000. I think we can support in this way. I remember saying, I loved him. But he lives with us. Why? Because, and I'm going to open this up, on the front of our logos, every single day, on our chests, Andy designed this logo. He helped us design this logo. He's with us. Rest in peace, Andy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a new member, and I remember first coming here, I was so nervous and shy and anxious, and Andy walked up to me and introduced himself, and I just thought, what a special, kind person. And then I did my first table topics, and he sent me an email telling me how well I'd done, and it just made me want to come back, really inspired and encouraged me. So this is a message from John Tonkin. Thank you for your detailed messages about the sad, sad loss of Andy. This has hit me like a bolt from the blue. Unfortunately, I'm about to depart on vacation, the last AMP incentive trip to Hawaii. So we'll be unable to attend the meeting or Andy's funeral. Please pass my condolences and deep sympathies to Nikki and his 2 adult children. I have known Andy a long time and share his Christian faith. So I know Andy is in a better place with God and now can be with his daughter Natasha, who was lost in the terrible Tongariro Field Centre trip accident 10 years ago. Andy and I have the loss of a child in common, as many of you know. For those that do not, we lost our precious boy Samuel in 2011 in a car accident. Andy used to text me every anniversary of Sam's passing with kind words of support and sharing. These words meant so much to me. I endeavoured to match his thoughtfulness on Natasha's anniversary, however was not so consistent and dedicated. Andy was such a kind and loving individual who shared his faith by his stories and caring nature personally and at our meetings. Andy always gave me his full attention and interest when speaking with me, a rare skill. he also strengthened my faith. I must share the story about the time that Andy told me he was just leaving a Christian conference, and a John the Baptist-like chap, long hair, beard, and generally unkempt disposure, stopped him on the exit door and told him he was about to receive a miracle. Andy, of course, thought the guy was having him on. However, this chap kept on repeating that a miracle was coming his way. At that time, Andy's phone kept ringing on a private number, and Andy chose to ignore it. It was only when his phone rang again with Auckland City Hospital's number telling him they had a matching kidney for him and he needed to get there ASAP that Andy realised this guy was for real. Andy told me that he had cancer on his kidney some months ago and was forced to make the painful decision not to have surgery due to the downsides of this. Of course, he must have known the end was near, however, never made a fuss or complained of his pain. Just so sad, Andy, that I haven't seen you lately and your passing has occurred so suddenly. Andy, I will miss you so much. Shed some tears both now and on the 11th and pray for you and your family. I will see you again, my friend. Rest easy in God's kingdom. You have surely earned it. Miss you heaps. Love and hugs. P.S. Best wishes to all and for those who are attending the meeting on Thursday and Andy's funeral. Enjoy the time of memories and reflection of a wonderful guy.
Fellow Toastmasters, I've known Andy for a long time, and I'm going to talk about something a little different. And yes, his speeches for me were always very special. They always, has already been said this morning, left a message that seemed to be poignant and worthwhile hanging on to. And whether they were humorous, whether they were in some way a message about faith. I really wanted to focus this morning on Andy as a Chief Executive of Family Life, which is another part we haven't talked about much this morning, but I knew him in that context. And my time goes back to a period where I guess in recruitment you look for people that have got themselves into a role either by accident or by deliberation that suits them. And Andy for me was in a role, as Peter suggested, but it's a role that he was meant to be. He was meant to do that role. There was nothing about his mind, body or soul that didn't fit completely with the role of Chief Executive of Family Life and the destiny to try and help marriages succeed. And so some years ago, when we were still not even here in this building but in the university, I had a speech to give out of a manual which is pick a controversial topic and try and convince your audience that that controversial viewpoint on the topic was worthwhile doing. And I looked at my evaluator and saw it was Andy Bray. And at that time, the Flying Start organisation had a number of people that were quite religious, Christian faith, rather than necessarily Jewish faith. And so I decided that I would pick a topic that was marriage was an outdated concept. And I worked hard at this speech. I created this sound, logical, passionate rationale as to why marriage was an outdated concept. And Andy had to then give back the valuation. Well, this will be a challenge for him. But like we've heard this morning, he did it with great grace, provided me good, honest feedback, and it was only his very last comment at the end which had anything to do with the content, which was really, I do have to disagree with you. That was very good of him. And some years later, I had need of his service. My marriage was in trouble, and I rang Andy and said, Andy, I need some help here. And he gave it to me in two different forms. One is he said, well, this is some of the things you should think about doing, and if I was you, I'd speak to different counsellors. And he gave me one for Linda, and he gave me his own for me. He said that when I was going through a challenge with Natasha, this is the person I went to, and I suggest you would get on with this person. And as you'd expect, he chose two perfectly ideal people for the different personalities that Linda was and I was, and it was extraordinarily helpful. And I went back to him later on and said, I now have trouble with my youngest son dealing with this issue. And he gave me a whole bunch of reading. He spent time with my son, and we got that all back on track again. And that, for me, was, like everybody else has said this morning, this giving nature. It was selfless. He just was there and did the job he needed to do. And more recently, he came to me and said, you know, I'm going to be turning 60 soon. I've been in family life for a long time. I've been the chief executive for a long time. It's time for me to stand down as I get to 60 and allow this organisation to have a new chief executive and to continue beyond my time. And for me, that's the mark of a good chief executive, to recognise that you need to create longevity in your organisation, particularly in a charity organisation that can't live and breathe around one individual. And he did, and we went through and prepared a job specification and found him a new chief executive, and he then graduated to the board and was part of that board process. And I think the organisation is going to continue without Nikki and Andy. And lastly, I think it was Stephanie, you mentioned about the weekend. I didn't go to a weekend, but I did go through a series of evenings or weekends where we attended one of his this is what marriage is about, these are the sorts of things you should look for and do. And if you haven't been to one of those, and I think I encourage somebody here who's about to get married to try, yes, I don't know whether you did, but to go to one of these sessions. And what it taught me was something I wish I'd learned before I got married some 30 odd years before, which is when you sit down to get married or when you have a partner that you want to spend the rest of your life with, it's really, really important to set up the value system, set up the behaviours that you agree to, what's important to you and what isn't important to you. Do that up front. And I think if I had done that 30 years ago, then I probably would have had a different outcome to where I ended up. So it's a lesson I'm taking with me. And it's an example for me of how well Andy and this entire group that he has called Family Life deliver and live and breathe the day in, day out.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. I recently saw Andy being interviewed on television with regards to the tragedy that 10 years ago. And he was the only parent who did not focus on himself and talk about his tragedy and his loss. Instead, he spoke to the survivors of the tragedy, and he encouraged the survivors to live their lives to the full and not feel guilt. That's the mark of a selfless man and a great man.
I told Deborah I was going to be giving a speech, and she said, But I'm going to be giving one of my speeches. We've had the email went out, said, one of the giants have fallen. I've got another one, there's big shoes to fill. For me, one word is very succinct. Talking about Andy, and that's authentic. It's something I spoke about in my speeches 9 and 10. And that's one word that, for me, Andy was all about. When he came up here, he was being himself. He didn't put on this kind of act. So big shoes to fill. I can remember what Andy looks like. He had slightly sandy hair. He was always well dressed. So he always came up here and his clothes were freshly laundered. I can't always remember, his shirt was always ironed. He wore jeans occasionally. But I can't, for God's sake, remember his shoes. I can't. I mean, I don't think he wore grey shoes. Did he wear kind of sandy shoes? What kind of shoes? He may have wore cowboy boots. I think he would fit cowboy boots very well. So when I think about shoes to fill, I can't really see how any of us can actually fill those shoes. And what I thought, instead of, just to kind of finish, at the end of when we do our Toastmaster speeches, is we get a cup. And I'm kind of saying it slightly in cheek. I was going to say, let's have a pair of shoes that Andy had, and we have to wear them as Toastmaster of the day to follow up. And then the next week it's on. I know it's very foolish, but I think in some ways to commemorate him and as a kind of memorial, and again, I don't know if this would be taken up as somehow sort of a cup, is to say the Andy Bray is in terms of our token of appreciation of what he actually brought to this club. So thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. A couple of words that I think sums it up. Pam picked the word selfless, and I think Andy truly was selfless. And Steph talked about him always being in the moment whenever you spoke to him. And to me, that's the mark of a person, that they can stay present and be with you, and that's a difficult thing to do. Andy was a dream in terms of being a VP education, because with the Easy Speak scheduling, always knew that I could pick on Andy, he'd never refuse a role. And particularly if somebody was giving a real seminal speech, an icebreaker, or something that was very personal to them, if it was a wedding or so on, Andy would be the perfect evaluator. Again, that presence and that warmth that he had about him, he would always be so insightful with his evaluations, and he would go straight to the point and the heart of the matter. I don't know who said they were an atheist. I'm probably part of that camp. I can't say I'm a lapsed Catholic. I'd like to be Jewish. I'm not Christian. So I probably fit in the atheist camp. But to me, the mark of Andy was that he never really pushed his faith, but it was such a part of who he was. And to me, Andy was all about relationships. And I think here we're all about relationships and that family feeling that we have. And we'll continue to do that in Andy's memory. So for me, picking up on what Andrew said, I think we should do an Andy Bray evaluation cup, so the best evaluation, because Andy evaluated life and he shared his insights with us and helped us move on. So,
Thank you, Mike. I'm wearing this shirt in honour of Andy because he has good dress sense too. And I can remember the shirts that he wore, nice floral shirts. I first met Andy when I was at school. He was 2 years ahead of me, and we played volleyball together, both at school level and club level. And Gary, this is volleyball on a hard floor, not that sandy stuff that you play on. So when you hit the floor, it hurt. Andy loved volleyball. It was a team sport, and he just loved being in the volleyball team, and I can still remember him as that. People ask me about Toastmasters, and I always give an example about Toastmasters of what it can do as an organisation. And then I talk about Flying Start, and I always bring up the name Andy Bray as a person who taught us something and who has left a legacy in this club. And when I say legacy, I mean Sir Colin Meads in rugby legacy. I mean Sir Peter Blake in yachting legacy. He's left this legacy with us that gives us the opportunity to do things that I don't think many other clubs around the world have. And that is the opportunity to open up your heart and speak so deep from your heart that people around the room cry. And people around the room think, well, if Andy can give a speech about his daughter, about his health, about anything like that, then maybe I can do that also. And we've seen it in this club over the years, other members getting up and speaking from so deep in their heart that we're just going, wow. So when I think about Andy, I think about the legacy that he has left once.
Andy Bray's father was the deputy head at my school, Iro. So I knew Mr. Bray as a lovely, gentle guy. And then years later, met Andy. Oh wow. Such a family, such a strong, loving, big-hearted family they are. Andy led a company that strengthened marriages in New Zealand, and I did a spot of volunteering there. And I saw Andy as a team member. Sure, he was a leader, but man, he was the team. He was part of the team. He wasn't above, he was with. He would also
Also at lunchtime, every lunchtime, rang Nikki. He rang Nikki to hear her voice and to listen to her day. And that was a good example. He just such a lovely man. He loved her so much. He loved his children so much. And he spoke very highly of all his 3 children. And I was going to tell that story that Helen gave, so you now know the story of how he, by example, taught that couple while he's on hemo and the power went out. But what Helen didn't mention was that he had said to them, everything will be all right and the key will come.
We loved Andy because we loved watching him with others. He gave us undivided attention, which is such a wonderful feeling to be fully heard and fully acknowledged. He did that with our lovely daughter, Nikki, in a humorous speech competition. And it was just so touching because she was going through, as teenagers do, this awful juxtaposition between who she's brought up to be and what she wanted to try, and he listened to her and developed her in no time at all. He respected her as he respected everyone he listened to and helped them with the plan. So grateful as we all are at hearing him speak. He was an influential but non-judgmental person. I felt his care for myself and others. He could clarify problems and make you better off smiling and uplifted. He was remarkable in the way he supported others with honest, effective, compassionate, wise counsel and fresh ideas. He had charisma, but was humble. He demonstrated his faith through the warmth and genuine care for each person he met, and for the greater good of the New Zealand community. He would make us laugh at himself, despite the terrible times we've been through. Andy, we celebrate you, and I thank you.
Kia ora koutou. For me, Andy was someone who you could connect with instantly. You know, you come into an environment like Toastmasters and you're new and you kind of feel shy or anxious at the beginning, but Andy settled me down and made me feel good about being here. He was also someone who was a purveyor of very wise and good advice and was incredibly supportive, and even though I didn't have a close relationship with him, you know, the times when I did speak with him, I felt as though he kind of really knew me and was really, really insightful and would say things that would actually really get into here and make me think. And there's not very many people who have the ability to do that. I was sharing with someone about him last night, and I thought it's one of those odd things that when someone passes away, we suddenly put them into a past tense in our language in English, but in actual fact, you know, I think that Andy is still with us today, and so I put him in the present tense. He was very supportive to me a few years ago when we must have been still over at university, and my brother died in a car accident just a couple of years earlier. The grief was still very fresh for me, and I had a real moment of being really, really teary, and he was just incredible. He just gave me the permission and the space to be really upset that day, and it was a moment where it shifted my grief. Actually, he was fantastic at dealing with grief. He is very, very well respected in the Christian community, very well known, and extraordinarily well respected. And the way he led a lot of the discussion following the death of his own daughter, you know, showed such bravery and leadership. You know, he really stood in that space for the Christian community, and that's beyond imagination, really, to be able to do such a thing in the midst of your own deep grief. he in recent times helped me. I've been very busy with a contract at the moment, but he helped me set up the logo and that sort of thing for the newsletter, and I hope to be back soon and involved with that. And I sat with him and we had fantastic discussions over everything. You know, he's the most kind, giving person that I could ever meet, and has made a difference in my life, and I know we're all in some.
Good morning. I definitely echo everything that the thoughts that you all shared today. I just wanted to share that I did take on Howard's advice, and I did go to one of those weekends that I not only will remember, but I will never forget. And it set me up for my marriage. And 4 years ago, I went to that, and it really, when I read that email that Andy had passed away, my heart broke for Nikki, because the biggest word that I can say is admiration for their marriage, and that's where I wanted to be. Then going into being married, I wanted the relationship that they had, and they taught us so much over that weekend, and I'll never forget that. So.
Well, I haven't been as lucky as you all to have such a long, deep friendship with Andy, and I've only known him in a Toastmasters capacity. But I feel extremely confident to say that Andy truly puts the master in Toastmasters, and he is the epitome of everything that we are here to learn. His ability to engage the audience with sharing his stories, whether it's humorous or emotional, is just amazing, and he uses all of the skills that we're here to learn. And I always felt very badly for anyone who had to evaluate him, because finding something for him to improve on is an impossibility. And one of his speeches that really stuck with me was, he sat here and he had a photo album and he just went through telling stories. His storytelling ability was outstanding, and for him to just do that so effortlessly, it seemed so unplanned, but he had so much to say and such perfect delivery. Anyway, I thank Andy for his inspiration to me, to help me to be a better speaker, which is why we're all here. And I have a few words from Craig Maskell. Andy stood up in humility, but also strength, to clearly state his beliefs and to practice them with heartfelt compassion towards others and in a practical way of giving himself. This was done in an increasingly secular environment and required courage, conviction and clarity of mind. He did all these things well. Good on you, mate.
Here we go, Toastmasters. I still don't feel wise, and I've been a member of Toastmasters until my honorary membership of Toastmasters for a couple of decades, I suppose. But I do feel that Andy's impression on me should have made me wise. And when I think of him storytelling, just sitting there was always a message. Especially I remember one time at Helen's for the Christmas do, telling a humorous story, how he always injected his humour and lessons of life, lessons of love, how to make a relationship work. It always left something for me, thinking, yes, I'm going to take that on board, I'm going to become wise. Andy's speech demonstrates that. Thank you, Andy. And every speech just left me with a life lesson, which I'm really grateful for. Another thing about him is he was the best hugger, the very best hugger. I have to say, after he got his new kidney, he was actually a bony hugger, but he was still the best hugger. I could notice his loss of weight, and I understand that now he was in worse health, and I thought he just had some digestive levelling issues, but perhaps there was more going on. And my final thing about Andy that is so strong in my memory is his voice. His voice, I can still hear it. He might be gone, but I can still hear it. And his voice was just so soothing. I don't know if he developed it or he just always had that soothing, that almost caressing voice. So I don't think I'm ever going to forget that.
I was hungover on Saturday night when from like looking at Facebook, and saw Mary's message, and I thought, oh dear, poor Mary, he just lost his mother-in-law. Now he's just lost another friend. And you know how on Facebook you've got to hit the button to get to the next little bit of information. And when I got to a little bit of information, I saw him again, and he was talking about it wasn't just Mary's dear friend, it was all of our dear friends. My immediate reaction was just screaming, not Andy, no, not Andy. It can't be, Andy was invincible. It can't be Andy, he's got this wrong. I'm quite sure the neighbours probably heard me as well, because Gary, I was escalator, tears were streaming. I still couldn't believe it. I went back and read that message morning several times. Andy was my friend, I guess his friend. He was like a brother and a father, a counsellor. He was always there for my back. He knew the times that I had were pretty rough at times. And like Peter and Gary, I was at that special 50th birthday of his, and Nikki asked me to write a piece for the book, which I did. Right at that time, Morgan's and my marriage had just broke up. But Morgan decided when he knew about it, he would still like to come because we'd both been invited. Andy didn't know. At the end of the evening, as we were leaving, he said, "You two are great." He said, "I love you both dearly." And I didn't have the courage. I didn't want to spoil his party to tell him that we weren't a couple any longer. Yeah, I thought Andy was invincible because he had so much faith that he just kept on going when adversity was against him. And I've told so many people that times when it's been tough, just, you know, you haven't seen what tough's about. We in Toastmasters have lost a friend. The chain has been broken. I think it's the first death, am I right? That we've ever had in the club? Never. Yes, never. And Tony, yes, that's right, Tony. And, you know, again, that link has gone, third link has gone. But, you know, I think my last words would be to say, let's keep on smiling and just give each other love and hugs, because as someone else would have said, we are a family. We support each other. We have each other's back. And as we know, throughout the years that we've all been together in so many years, that is what we do. So let's remember Andy. I have Andy's faith as well, and what I would say to you, let not your hearts be troubled, nor let them be afraid.
I was in Wellington. I'd been at a wedding, and Gary called me on Sunday morning. I hadn't been checking my emails. And I didn't cry. I was just utterly shocked. Words like, oh my God, went through my mind, and I thought, is that okay when I'm talking about Andy? But I also thought, I'd been at a lovely wedding of a young couple who were the son of my oldest friend that I had known. We were born 26 days apart. And it was a lovely wedding, and I thought, the stars are aligning, Andy would have approved. I've got a few memories of Andy that really resonate with me, and I'd like to bring them to your attention again. And one of the ones that I loved was Andy talking about kids. And I don't know if you remember, he brought up the plates. And he talked about the shape. He talked about his kids, and he talked about all those round plates. And then he brought out the oval plate. And he said, you know, every now and then, in a family, someone comes along and they're oval. And that's okay. You know, they're made out of the same stuff as those other round plates, but they're oval. And I thought, that is such a wonderful way to think about people that are different, whether it's kids or whoever you meet in your life. You know, we're all the same. Some of us are oval, some of us are round. I also remember his kissing step. And I think what came to me from that is, and about the plates, is that Andy
worked hard to do what he did in his life. And for me, that's his message that I take from Andy, that these things don't happen. They're not just because you're a wonderful person, all that sort of stuff. He worked hard every day of his life to love his wife, to accept people. And I think that's an incredible thing that I've taken away from knowing Andy. The other thing that I always think about Andy about is he always stayed for coffee, and he would chat and he would talk. And people have said that he made you feel really special, but actually I think he was genuinely interested in everybody's opinion. That was what was building his opinions and experiences of life. And again, that's a wonderful thing for us to remember, that everybody has got something to offer. And in conclusion, I think it's kind of fitting in a way when I heard that Andy had died of a heart attack, because he worked his heart hard. He worked his heart so hard, and he had a broken heart at times as well. And in a funny sort of way, I think that summed up Andy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contributions. Can we ask Craig to just sum up the meeting for us? Please welcome.
Well, my official role today was to be the general evaluator. And talking to Mike, he said, we don't really want a general evaluation. Everyone today has spoken from their heart about how they feel about Andy. And it's fantastic. And I will be writing down all the comments. And it's just such a testament to a wonderful, wonderful fellow who was our friend, our mate, and we loved him. So what I want to do, you give me 5 minutes, is that right? I've got 5 minutes. What I'd like to do, and please hit those buttons when the time comes back, because I am of nature a speaker over time. So hit those buttons. So first part of this, I'm going to talk about Andy and my impressions of Andy and memories of Andy. And the second part, I'd like to, if I can, if it's ever possible, to sum up what we've talked about today. I don't think that's possible. Anyway, part one. About 20 years ago, I was at a part of my life when I had a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people that I knew, and they knew me, and I networked and all that sort of thing. But I didn't have a really, really close friend. And I was walking along through a park one day, and as I do, I pray as I walk. You know, I sort of ask for things. And I said, God, I need a good friend. I need a good friend, someone that I can really kind of share with, someone who can trust me and I can trust them. And within about 2 weeks, I think it was, this guy Andy Bray walks into my life. And somehow or another, we just clicked. We hit it off. And you know what that's like. You click with somebody, don't you? I think, as we shared today, we all clicked with Andy. And what started then was a wonderful friendship where we just shared together over about 20 years. More than actually probably the last 4 or 5, not quite as much, but you know, you could just sit out here with him, couldn't you, on those tables afterwards and sit and share, and he'll be really, really interested in you. It's wonderful, wonderful thing to do. So he's been a good mate to me. We also discovered that we had a similar background. He was in Scouts and Ventures, and so was I. In fact, we'd been on some competitions together. We didn't know each other. He was in a different group than I was, and that sort of thing, but we would have competed against each other. And part of Andy's nature, in the sporting guy, he is a competitor. And he likes to do very well, what have you, in sports and that sort of thing. And he was such an out there sort of guy physically, and then to have to face that challenge later in life, he couldn't do things physically. And you could see that he really wanted to, but he couldn't do it, but he accepted it. He accepted his lot in life. He got me involved in Flying Start. Because of that friendship, he saw my company and he talked about what he could do. He said, why don't I get some of my Flying Start mates to come along, we'll run a speech for afterwards for your company. And so they came along, Andy and a few others, I don't want to here actually, came along, and held a speech craft course over 6 weeks, and in the back of that a whole bunch of us joined Flying Start. and the rest is history. Andy once told me, he said, you know, there's a lot of caring goes on in this group, Flying Stars. It's not like other clubs you go to. He says, people actually really do care about each other. And I've watched and observed, as you will have too, and that is so true. And it's been evident today. Andy's probably been the chief carer of us all. So now the responsibility is on us to take over that and do our bit as we care for each other going forward. Andy didn't have a lot of in assets or money, and that's okay. He's got some, and that's the thing. But he gave a lot up for other people, and Nikki did too. They're a partnership together. They did that. They gave a lot up for other people. As I watched and observed the effect that they've had on other lives, our lives, that's been huge. It's been huge. There's been a bit of talk today about the Christian faith, and Andy, for me, encapsulated that. He never rammed it down my throat. I never saw him or heard of him ramming it down anyone else's throat. And he and I both hated that anyway, that sort of concept where that happens. He wasn't that sort of guy. Nobody in this room was that sort of guy or girl either. He encapsulated it, and we loved him for it. It was just evident. He lived it, which was marvellous. Thank you. Just to sum up, if it's possible ever to sum up, each one of us, in fact, each one, Andy said to me one day, he said, you know, everyone carries something, you know. I said, you've got a lot of stuff in your life, mate, you know, it's really kind of, must be wearing it down. He says, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something in their life that they struggle with, or they've struggled with in the past, or they're going to in the future. He said, everybody carries a burden. And so let's help each other carry each other's burdens. And so I thought that's so true. So true. So where do we go? Where do we go? We've shared what Andy means to us. And we've shared the wonderful attributes of his character and his life. And I think where we go is we pick those things out of the things that have been shared, are personal to us, that are valid to us, and we make them real in our lives going forward. We make them real in our lives going forward. Here's our example. He was our carer-in-chief. He made us laugh. He made us cry. Wonderful guy. We will never, ever forget.
Everybody. I'm just going to wrap up now. Last night I was at a Rotary dinner, and there I met a former member of this club who many of you know, Martin Smith. He knew and admired Andy very much. It's very sad that he died today, but sends his love and best wishes. Also there speaking was Kingy Bill. Kingy has won the international speech contest 3 times in New Zealand, and was the runner-up at the World Championships in 2013. I'd like to just quote something he said in that speech, because it was about a boy who had departed. He said, "Go, my son, go to the other world. Go to your ancestors. Proceed along the path with the thousands. Proceed along the path of the myriads, along the path from which no messenger will return, where illness and pain cannot reach you, and you'll suffer no more." And may I add, a Maori farewell, Ki taku noa hoa, moiti agimai. Farewell, my friend. Sleep in